Welcome everyone to NoDQ&A Video, the official Q&A video series of NoDQ.com. I am Aaron Rift, the owner of NoDQ. Tonight, I will be answering your questions, many submitted via email, but also you can send in a super chat. Super chats are much appreciated. They help out the channel. Thank you to everybody that does send in a super chat. And if you send a super chat, your question will get top priority. Now, Psycho Jet Black has sent in the first super chat of the evening, and thus we'll get the first question of the stream. Shout out to Psycho Jet Black. PJB says, will you get the ESPN app to watch WWE pay-per-views or PLEs in 2026? I will do whatever it takes. I hope I don't have to spend more money than I have been, but this is my job, and at the end of the day, I need to watch the shows. Yes, I will watch Raw, SmackDown, and the premium live events, and if I have to subscribe to ESPN to do it, then that's how it will be. Now, thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I will also read off some emails regarding the ESPN deal, which was one of the top stories of the week. But before we get to that, we will get to the ESPN comments in just a second. As I said, super chats take priority. Dave is a Beastly 2024 sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you. Much appreciated. The comment here is, what was life like in the Monday Night Wars? It was a very exciting time to be a fan. It was a period where I would not miss a show. And if I could not watch both Raw and Nitro live, I would definitely tape Nitro. I was always looking forward to the live shows. I would watch them live. And then when the show was over, I was already thinking about next week's show. I already was fantasy booking ideas in my mind. What were they going to do on the next week's show? And that's something I don't do a lot now. It's a different era. I don't watch Raw these days and then think, what are they going to do next week? I wonder if they could do this or if they could do that. I just don't feel that way anymore about wrestling. And I feel bad for fans today that didn't really get to live through that period when you had two rival companies that were neck and neck. And this isn't even WWE and AEW, because AEW has been far behind WWE for the most part. WCW, as many people know, was beating WWE in various areas, whether it was pay-per-view buys, which they did. Several WCW pay-per-views in 97 outdrew WrestleMania. WrestleMania that year wasn't even the most purchased WWE pay-per-view of the year. Think about that. That's crazy. WCW's TV ratings were higher, and sometimes they were outdrawing WWE in attendance. WCW was doing very well for about 2 years, and then they free-falled and eventually went out of business. But 1998, a very exciting time to be a fan. Shout out to Calvin Bowman. I'll stay on the topic of the Monday Night Wars since Calvin had sent in an email question. Calvin said, what is your favorite Raw is War episode from 1998? And what was the funniest segment from that year? Calvin said his pick was DX making fun of the Nation of Domination. That is definitely up there. Best overall Raw episode, in my opinion, I would say the night after WrestleMania 14, when you had a new era begin with Steve Austin as the champion. He got arrested by Vince after giving him the stunner. You had Triple H come out there, bring back X-Pac, and then at the end of the show, you had Road Dogg and Billy Gunn joining the group. I loved that episode of Raw. Another one of my favorites was the one, I believe it was the go home for SummerSlam. You actually had a Hell in a Cell match on Raw. That's insane to think about today. I think it was Mankind versus Kane. I'm not sure if that was the match or not, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember the Hell in a Cell match, and then the one segment with China and The Rock, and The Rock was definitely pushing the envelope with some of his comments, telling China she should be on her knees. It's almost like a natural position. And then Shawn Michaels comes out there to make the save. And then the end of the show, you had the face-off between Steve Austin and The Undertaker and the Highway to Hell. I think the stage, actually the ramp, flames were coming out of the ramp to symbolize the Highway to Hell. Awesome show. I mean, that was one of the best go-home shows I had ever watched. It got me so hyped for SummerSlam that year. Those would be my favorites. And funniest moment, the Nation parody, although hasn't really aged well. So I think I would go with Mr. Sacco, the hospital. I think that is my favorite comedy segment of the year. I mean, the whole Vince McMahon in the hospital with Mr. Sacco and then Steve Austin coming in, hitting him with the bedpan. That was hilarious. And I think that is still funny today. You know, some of those segments didn't hold up so well. But that one, I think, is always funny. And yes, thank you, Jeremy. Kane versus Mankind was, in fact, Hell in a Cell, and it was on that Raw. All right. We got a super chat here from Psycho Jet Black, and thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. Again, the super chats take priority. If I don't get to all of my email questions tonight, I will definitely come back with another Q&A, so keep that in mind. Psycho Jet Black says, will AEW ever reach the heights of WCW? Well, they have in some ways. Look at attendance. Even though AEW has been down, their biggest shows, they outdrew WCW. The two London shows, 80,000 fans for that first AEW All In London. WCW's biggest show was right around 40,000 people. AEW surpassed them in attendance. And live gates, AEW's gates for their shows, even adjusted for inflation, surpassed WCW. Now, television viewers, no. They haven't even come close to that, but WWE is far down from what they were at their peak. And, of course, that's because wrestling is not as popular as it was in the late 90s, but also people watch and consume wrestling in different ways now. You have your streaming services, and then you have YouTube. People can watch social media clips like on Twitter or Facebook, and it's just a different period. I would say AEW has not reached WCW's level as far as mainstream popularity and having stars at the level of the WCW stars. Like AEW is more geared towards a niche cult audience of wrestling fans, you know, the wrestling purists. And WCW was trying to cater to the mainstream. They were bringing in the celebrities like Dennis Rodman, and you would have segments with Jay Leno on The Tonight Show. WCW was very mainstream at their peak. And when I was in high school, for most of my life, I don't really see people out in real life with wrestling shirts. But when I was a teenager, I'd see people with the Stone Cold shirts and the DX shirts and the NWO shirts. That's how big wrestling was. People that didn't really follow wrestling that closely got interested in it because the Monday Night Wars had created such a buzz, and people were hooked on the shows. Thank you for that again. I appreciate it. Now let's get back to ESPN because I did get some questions on that. Big G, the real Big G, our Big G from NoDQ, says, what are your thoughts on the ESPN deal, and do you think wrestling fans will follow pursuit to ESPN? I think it's great for WWE, and this does tie into what I was just talking about as far as mainstream. WWE getting this ESPN deal, it might be their biggest deal they've ever gotten, because ESPN is about as mainstream as it gets. And for years, Vince McMahon wanted WWE to be accepted as mainstream entertainment. For years, people outside of the wrestling bubble, they looked down on wrestling. They thought that it was lowbrow, second-rate entertainment. But now WWE is with ESPN, as they say, the worldwide leader in sports. I think Vince McMahon would be thrilled about this deal, and he probably is. I'm sure he's aware of what's going on. It is very significant for WWE. The money is obviously great. They're getting a nice increase. It's potentially bad for fans, but for WWE and their mainstream position, I think it's really significant for them. Now, the real OTC of NoDQ sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Does Bronson Reed have a shoe stealing problem? He definitely does. And just like Kenny Omega was the belt collector and now Mercedes Moné is, maybe Bronson Reed will be the shoe collector and he'll keep stealing shoes. Like, why stop at Roman Reigns? Keep stealing shoes from everybody in the locker room, and then they could show like MTV Cribs Bronson Reed edition with him in his house, and he's got a whole closet full of wrestlers' shoes. That should be his gimmick, the show stealer. Or no, not the show stealer, the shoe stealer, Bronson Reed. And that's his gimmick. You know how the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, would stuff a dollar bill down somebody's throat after beating them? Well, after Bronson Reed beats somebody, he steals their shoes or steals their boots, and he collects them as trophies. I don't think anybody's done that before. So I think Bronson Reed should do that. He should be the shoe stealer, Bronson Reed. I like it a lot. Thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. Now back to the ESPN topics, or questions, I should say. Matthew said, this was an email. Matthew said, after a generation of fans paying $9.99 or less for WWE, do you think the move to ESPN and paying $30 will dramatically hurt their visibility and fan engagement, or will the machine just keep rolling along business as usual? I think that business will be moving along as usual. I think some people will be kicking and screaming, and I think inevitably they will lose a few viewers, but probably a drop in the bucket compared to potential new viewers that they'll gain from this. With WWE's deal, they'll probably get plugged on ESPN shows and sports broadcasts, and I think that WWE will gain some new viewers from this partnership with ESPN, and it will actually cause a net increase. So for how many they lose, they'll gain more, and WWE will be just fine. And it sucks if you got to pay more. Some fans might already have ESPN and they have that whole bundle thing, and it won't really affect them much. And some people, $30, no big deal, whatever. And there'll be others that are like, I paid $10 for 11, 12, 13 years, and I ain't paying a penny more. And that's totally fine. That's what they want to do. So be it. But to answer your question, I don't think it will hurt WWE in the long run. Thank you for those. And then Ian sent in an email question. Ian sent in this question that says, is the ESPN deal with WWE going to make a profit, or should Nick Khan have a backup plan in case it bombs? It's not going to bomb. WWE is making a lot of money from this deal, and it's a long-term deal with ESPN. I think that WWE is just going to keep getting better and better deals as time goes on. I think that they are already making a tremendous profit. Look at their TKO's quarterly numbers. WWE is doing very well, and they will continue to do very well for the foreseeable future. You know that phrase, too big to fail? Well, I really do think that applies to WWE. They truly are like Disney in a way. I mean, Disney is Disney, but WWE has gotten so big and it's such a well-oiled machine that I think they're safe, you know, unless there's some serious scandal with like Triple H or Roman Reigns or something like that. I don't think that anything's going to cause them to lose their significant money deals that they have. And keep in mind, all the money they're making from Saudi Arabia. I mean, they're just making money from so many different resources. I mean, they're going to be fine for many years to come. All right, Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. So thank you for this, Psycho. I appreciate it. Psycho Jet Black's super chat. Will WWE book Brock Lesnar to face new wrestlers like Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, or Jacob Fatu, or will they do rehashes of Cena, Orton, Cody, and Roman Reigns? I think it will be a mix of both. Now that Brock is back, he's obviously going to be facing John Cena at some point. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. I could see another match with Cody because of their history. I could see a match with Roman Reigns at some point. But yeah, I definitely think there's potential there with guys like Braun Breaker and Bronson and Jacob Fatu. I mean, now that he's back, you might as well do those matches. To me, that's money to get him in there with those guys. Now that there are some new beasts in WWE, Brock Lesnar has challengers that he can go toe-to-toe with. And don't forget Obafemi, too, in NXT. He's another guy, once he gets called up, they can put him in there with Brock Lesnar. All right, let's get to an email question. So this one is from Jeremy. Jeremy says he was looking at the upcoming PLE schedule, and we got John Cena versus Logan Paul, Clash in Paris, and then he said with WWE likely doing War Games, they are, with both men and women, John Cena versus Brock Lesnar will likely take place at Crown Jewel. And what are my thoughts on the possible scenario? I could see it going either way with the Brock Lesnar Cena match. They might do it in Perth, but Survivor Series is a stadium show. And the fact that they're not doing Cena and Lesnar in Paris makes me think they want to hold off on a little bit and build it up. And yeah, Perth is a big show, but it's also in an arena and not a stadium. And they really want to sell those Survivor Series tickets. And they might be saving the John Cena-Lesnar match for there. I'm not sure what they got planned for the rest of Cena's run, but I expect him to have a big match at Survivor Series, whether it's against Lesnar or not. I don't necessarily think he'll be in the War Games match unless they need that top babyface in the spot. My guess is he will probably have a one-on-one match at Survivor Series. I just don't know if it will be Lesnar. But if not Lesnar, who else? I mean, could they do Gunther in that spot against Cena? I'm really curious, too, as to when they're doing the draft and how that's going to work. So there's still some questions. But, yeah, they could end up doing the Perth match with John Cena going up against Brock Lesnar. Would not shock me if they don't wait too long for that match. We'll see what they do. All right, we got one here from Gino. Gino, part of the No DQ panel, often on the review, sometimes a moderator. Gino says, this was via email. Gino says, fans are now singing John Cena's song instead of chanting John Cena sucks. Do you think this has made the heel turn worth it overall? I enjoyed the heel turn, even though I think the general consensus is that it was a disappointment. There were things about it I liked, and somebody made a good point here. the Cena heel turn really made you appreciate John Cena in a way and appreciate the babyface character, because that's John Cena at his best. When he's just going out there doing the hustle, loyalty, respect. He tried with the heel turn. He really gave it a good effort, and they made an attempt to change things up with him as much as they were willing to do. You know, I feel like they didn't go all the way. He still came out there with the merchandise. They had to sell all the merchandise, right? They couldn't change him up that much. And, you know, he wore the belt backwards, and they had the ring introduction. They attempted to do something different with him. But, yeah, I think the heel turn was worth trying, you know. Then it would have been a big what if they never pulled the trigger on it. I'm glad they went with it. They tried with it. I don't think it reached its full potential. I don't think it lived up to the high expectations from the initial angle, but I'm happy they did attempt it, and it was worth it to me. Now, Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. The super chats are much appreciated, and they get top priority. Building Nexus says, what are the chances John Cena goes for the IC title? I think unlikely at this point. If they were going to do it, they should have done it for Paris. They could have had John Cena versus Dominic Mysterio in Paris for the IC title. And Gino also wanted to know if Cena would go after the IC title. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. We don't have much time left for John Cena. I suppose he could do it for his final match if he wants to go out on a win. I don't think he's going to beat Brock Lesnar. That's the other thing. So for Lesnar and Cena, is Cena going to go out losing in his last match? Maybe he beats Dominic or whoever the IC champion is on Saturday night's main event and retires as the IC champion, and then they can just vacate it since it's not the world title, and Cena, he gets to leave with the title. Even though it's not the world title, the whole idea was he was going to leave with the title. He could leave with the IC title. But beyond that scenario, I don't think it's going to happen. Mr. Tito. Shout out to Tito. Check out his columns on NoDQ. He just wrote about the ESPN deal. Tito says, when will Naomi join the Bloodline? Well, funny you should ask, because Solo Sikoa did an interview and said that the Bloodline storyline is still in its third inning. I kid you not. He said that. If that's the case, and we got 6 innings left, God help us all, then yeah, there's plenty of time for Naomi to join the Bloodline. So maybe sometime within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see Naomi join the Bloodline. There you go, Mr. Tito. And thank you for the super chat. All right. We got this one from Steve-O, who is occasionally on the No DQ review or on predictions. Steve-O sent in an email and says, when and how would you have ended Cena's heel turn? Was SummerSlam the right time, or should they ride it out to his final date of retirement? I understood it wasn't working, but I felt the end was too abrupt, personally. I tend to agree with you on that. I always figured Cena would go back babyface before the end of his career. I just thought maybe they would stretch it out. They must have felt that for the last couple months, maybe they reached out the deal with Brock Lesnar. I mean, I feel like they started teasing the Cena face turn a month and a half ago, roughly. And that would have been around the same timeline that Brock Lesnar was coming back. So maybe they felt like, okay, Brock is coming back. They could do Brock as a heel versus Cena as a face. And maybe that's why they decided to speed it up. I think they were always planning it, but maybe they just decided, you know what? It hasn't really worked out the way we wanted. It got as far as it was going to go, and WWE decided to just flip them back. And that's basically what they did. It was very abrupt. I would have liked it to have been a little bit more organic in the storyline. But yeah, Cody Rhodes puts Cena through a table, signs a contract with Cena's hand, and then Cena all of a sudden flips the switch and is back to normal. It felt very abrupt and random. So yeah, I think they could have executed that better, but as it turns out, the match worked out, and it was a great match. I think it was the second best John Cena match of his career. And I don't know if it would have been at that level if he was still a heel in that match. I just don't know. Tito Wrestling sent in a $2 super chat. Says, who was hotter, Nikki or Brie Bella? Well, it's hard to say because they're twins, but I think Brie, personality-wise, I would go with her. But Nikki, I think, had a little bit more swagger to her. So it just depends on what your criteria is. I'm not sure if my wife can hear me right now. Caitlin? No, she can't hear me. She must be listening to music or something. What? Which Bella is hotter, Nikki or Brie? She said, oh, gosh. Put her on the spot.
A tie.
Ah, that's a cop-out answer. She says a tie. I said I like Brie's personality better, but I think Nikki has a little bit more swagger to her. What do you think? You know, Brie's more like the girl next door you can take home to mother, and Nikki's more the bad girl. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I don't know if I agree.
But some might think that makes Nikki hotter, but others might have different priorities and think Brie is hotter. She says, yeah.
I think at different times I've thought different things.
Different times she thought different things. Fair enough. And, of course, Nikki has the enhancements, too, that Brie doesn't have. So if you like that, then I guess you go with Nikki. All right. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. That was an interesting one, Tito. What are the best options for Cena's last match? Well, Survivor Series is a stadium show. I would go with either Brock Lesnar or Gunther for that show. Now, his last match, again, is he winning his last match? Is he putting over somebody in his last match? I kind of would like to see John Cena win his last match. He could lose at Survivor Series against Brock Lesnar or Gunther. And, maybe that scenario with Dominic Mysterio, he could win his last match, win a title. I feel like I would like to see him win his last match, even though the idea is that on your last match, you put somebody over on the way out. It's a great question because the last match will be in Boston, and I believe it's going to be Saturday night's main event. And it would be fun to see Cena actually win his last match. But you don't want him beating your top guy who's sticking around, like a Brock Lesnar or a Gunther. So that's why I say somebody like a Dominic Mysterio. But is Dominic the right guy to go against Cena? Like if it's Cena's absolute last match he's ever doing. I saw a comment from Matthew about Batista. I don't know if Batista's in the ring shape to do that match. Could he beat Solo, get his revenge for a couple years ago? Caleb Jacobs said maybe Cena could win the U.S. title from Solo Sikoa. I mean, that's a possibility too. All right. Mr. Tito with a $2 super chat says, who was hotter, Prime Sunny or Miss Elizabeth? Again, very different, and it depends on your criteria. I mean, Sunny was the most downloaded woman in the world, I think, or she was definitely up there for a period of time. When Sunny was at her peak, I mean, it's hard to top Sunny, but Miss Elizabeth was wholesome. Again, she's the one you would take home to mother, and then Sunny was a little bit more the bad girl, I think. So it just depends on what your criteria is for hot. But Miss Elizabeth, she was a very attractive woman. So it's hard to say. I mean, it just depends on your own criteria. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. I appreciate it. Psycho says, let's say Triple H gives Austin Theory one last chance to get over. How should they book Austin to be a credible upper mid-card star or even main eventer? All right, well, I think this is straightforward. When Austin Theory, if he returns, which I think he will, he needs to be a babyface from the get-go. Austin Theory has to come out there and beat the crap out of Grayson Waller, the fake Big G. Beat the Big G out of him. He comes out there, maybe he comes to the ring, and Theory acts like he's maybe going to be friends with Waller, and Waller's like, hey, how's it going? And then Theory just smacks him and beats the crap out of him. You turn him babyface, and I think that will instantly get him some sympathy with the fans. The fans will get behind him, and then you just push him as a babyface. Let him do his moves, and let him be a babyface character, and let him pick up some wins. And then maybe you can rehab him, and perhaps he'll reach his full potential. The heel act just wasn't working. So absolutely 100%, he needs to return as a massive babyface and be an ass kicker. If they do that, I think he's got a chance. We'll see what they do with him. I do think he'll be back at some point. It's just a matter of when. All right, we get back to the email questions. And this one comes from Dwayne Atchison. Dwayne, who's part of the No DQ panel and predictions, says, with John Cena passing the torch to Cody, who do you see Cody Rhodes passing it to? Hard to say. I think that person is not obvious right now. Is it Braun Breaker? Braun Breaker seems to be the closest thing to the guy that they're building for the future. Is it Obafemi? I don't know. Right now, I mean, WWE has so many guys that are over between Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, LA Knight, John Cena. The thing is, though, they're all upper 30s, 40s. With the guys in their 20s, Braun Breaker is maybe the closest thing to the guy that they're going to build the company around in the future. I would say Braun Breaker right now, but anything could change in a year or two from now. It's really tough to predict who the next top guy is going to be. And quite frankly, the next top guy might not emerge for another 5 years or so. I feel like that person might not even be in the company right now. That guy might be in AEW. Hard to say. I mean, Cody Rhodes left WWE in 2016. And remember, people were high on Cody in 2011, 2012 when he was doing the mirror gimmick and the mustache and everything. And people thought Cody was potentially going to be a top guy. It took him 10 years, a decade, before he really got to that spot. So it's very tough to say right now. Shout out to Building Nexus, who sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Building Nexus. I appreciate it very much. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat and says, what if Braun Breaker fought Cena in his last match? You know, I like that idea a lot. Braun Breaker versus Cena. If Cena's going out on a loss, I like the idea of Braun Breaker. If Cena's going out on a win, I'd prefer somebody like Dominic Mysterio or Solo Sikoa. It just depends on what they're doing with Cena. Like, Braun Breaker beating Cena could mean a lot. But then again, going back to Austin Theory, remember Theory beat Cena and it didn't really amount to anything for him. And even Solo Sikoa beat Cena and it didn't really mean much to him. You know what I mean? So they have to have the proper follow-up in order for it to work, as far as I'm concerned. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Tito. Says, do you believe Brock Lesnar played in Vince McMahon's sick game? Who knows? I don't even want to speculate on something like that. It's possible. I mean, there are so many potential dirty secrets and stories that are out there that we will never know about. And I think anything's possible. And there could be others that were involved in weird stuff with Vince McMahon. and we'll never know about it. So is it possible? Yeah. It could have happened with Brock Lesnar. There could have been even more that we don't know about. And that's the thing about wrestling. It is a bit sleazy. I have to agree with Dave Meltzer. Wrestling and WWE in particular, there's a lot of sleaze involved, and they have cleaned up over the years, but it's also a corporation, and there's so many things behind the scenes, and I don't know like what to think about some of this stuff. And perhaps it's better that we don't know, because if we find out more secrets from what's going on in the personal lives of these wrestlers and executives, might make us hate the business even more. So in some instances, I'd rather just not know. The less I know, the better, because the more weird shit that I hear about, the harder it is to be a fan of these guys. It is an interesting thing to think about, though. Like, what else is going out there that we just don't know about? All right, let's get back to the email questions. This one comes from Jeremy. Jeremy says, hey, Aaron, what's next for Seth Rollins? Do you see him and Cody Rhodes both being the world champion until WrestleMania 42? I think there's a good chance both of them will go into WrestleMania as champion. Could they lose the title before WrestleMania and then win it back? Yes. I have a bold prediction for WrestleMania. This ties into an email that I got from Ian. Ian says, what do you think is going to be the main event for next year's WrestleMania Night 1 and Night 2? I'm going to tie these two questions together. I think it's going to be Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns as one of the main events, probably the Night 2 main event. That will be the rubber match, because Roman Reigns won WrestleMania 39 and then 40 Cody won. So 42, you have the third match in the trilogy with them at WrestleMania. That will be one main event. And then Seth Rollins versus CM Punk. They did the angle at SummerSlam, so I feel like that's going to be the WrestleMania match. And they'll probably do the Roman and Seth Rollins stuff for Survivor Series. They'll do Team Roman versus Team Seth. I could see that being the War Games match to blow off the Roman and Seth Rollins feud for the time being. That's what I think at this point. And Rollins will be a champion against Punk. Punk going for his revenge. And then Cody will be champion defending against Reigns. That is my prediction right now for WrestleMania and who I think the champions will be going into that event. But could Rollins lose it and then win it back? Sure. We still got several months. More than that. We got like 7 or 8 months until WrestleMania. There's plenty of time to have some title changes, and we could see a back and forth with both titles, quite frankly. I mean, maybe Drew McIntyre gets it from Cody. I mean, I would not rule it out if Cody's doing that movie, the Street Fighter movie. Granted, I don't think he's going to be off TV for much of the time, but maybe Drew McIntyre wins it and then loses it back to Cody. Like, that could happen. All right, Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. I appreciate it. Psycho says, seriously, what happens with the Wyatt Six? I don't think being tag champions was part of the initial plans. And will Uncle Howdy wrestle a match at WrestleMania 42? All right. I am going to say this. The gimmick has run its course. I thought it was awesome when they brought them in as a tribute to Bray Wyatt. It was cool, but I think it has a shelf life, and they just can't do it as well as Bray did. Uncle Howdy can come out there and act like Bray Wyatt, but he's not Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt was a one-of-a-kind performer. Bo Dallas is talented, but he's not Bray. He's not Wyndham Rotunda. My opinion, and I feel like they've done what they can do with the gimmick, and it feels like it's in a box creatively, and they can't really break out of it. Like, they're just rehashing the same things they've already done. unless they can figure out something new to do with these guys. Like, it feels like a nostalgia act. You know, it feels like Bray Wyatt, Wyatt family tribute act. You know, they're like a tribute band to a legitimate band that you like. You go and you see this tribute band. That's what they are. They're a tribute band. And, you know, that's only going to get them so far. And I don't think Uncle Howdy is wrestling a match at WrestleMania 42, unless it's another multi-team or multi-person match. Maybe he's in Money in the Bank or something. But beyond that, I don't think Bray Wyatt Uncle Howdy is going to be in a match at WrestleMania 42. I would be surprised. All right, Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. Building Nexus says, could Seth Rollins be in Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania versus CM Punk or Roman Reigns? Yes. And I think that would be an appropriate way to end one of the storylines. Hell, I would love that for WrestleMania. I feel like they should do what I mentioned earlier. Wrap up the Roman Reigns storyline first, do the War Games as the blow-off to that, so Roman gets his revenge on Seth Rollins and then focuses on trying to win the Royal Rumble. And then you can do Punk versus Seth Rollins at WrestleMania, Hell in a Cell. I would love that. I think Punk and Seth, Hell in a Cell, would be an excellent WrestleMania main event. I think that would be very appropriate. And I'm glad they got rid of Hell in a Cell as a pay-per-view concept. You know, do the match when the story calls for it. And Rollins and Punk, after everything they've been through, remember, from day one Punk came back, Rollins was pissed off, and they've been at each other ever since. Hell in a Cell is how you settle that once and for all. WrestleMania, Hell in a Cell, to me, that's money. That's a money main event. So I would definitely do that. All right. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Now, Ian sent in an email question. Ian says, is WWE wise to keep Cody Rhodes a babyface for a while, or do you think WWE should do the heel turn sooner rather than later? Have a great day and say yes to No DQ. I think it's the right call. Cody Rhodes gets great reactions 95% of the time. Every once in a while, you'll hear some boos for Cody Rhodes. But it's not like John Cena, where every other town, they're booing him out of the building. They're singing his song. They love Cody. Cody's just a great babyface, and he's the flagship of the company. They've invested a lot in him as the top guy, and there's no good reason to turn him. They could have done the selling the soul thing to The Rock, but I think that keeping him as a good guy is the right thing. Eventually, though, they may want to reconsider, because you can only tell the babyface Cody story so many times, and everything gets stale after a while. Everything. Eventually, they might want to consider, but timing is everything. And I think if they do turn him, it's got to be the right time. It has to feel like the right time. And I don't know when that's going to be, but we'll see. All right. We got an email here from Marshall. Shout out to Marshall from Iowa. Do you think John Cena will become a general manager of Raw after his retirement from the ring? I would not rule it out. I don't know if John Cena plans on being around on TV after he's retired. He could come back for a referee spot or a general manager spot even. He might not show up at all, though, because he might have the attitude, if he shows up, people will have expectations that maybe he will come out of retirement and he'll get the itch to wrestle again. I could see him not doing anything. But if there's an opportunity, and again, timing is everything. If there's the right opportunity for Cena to come back in a non-wrestling capacity, I could see that happening. And I absolutely see the Hall of Fame. Wouldn't shock me if it happens as soon as 2026, maybe they hold off on it, but he'll obviously do the Hall of Fame. And yeah, he might pop around every now and then. I don't know if he'll become a regular character because, again, it might create unrealistic expectations from people that he might get the itch to do another match. I would lean towards no on that one. And also the problem with the general manager who's the top guy, whether it's Steve Austin or Mick Foley, a lot of times they'll outshine the talent, and you don't want that either. You kind of want somebody like Adam Pearce or Nick Aldis. They're good performers, but they're not necessarily going to outshine the guys on your active roster. I mean, they both could hang in there is what I'm trying to say. Hold up with the other guys. I think they could if they were in the right storyline. But with John Cena out there, I think he would outshine the other people. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. I appreciate it. Says, do you believe deep down that Dwayne Johnson does want to have a match with Roman? It's just that he's a very busy guy, or it's not that important to him. I think he wanted to. And again, as I mentioned in the previous questions, timing. Timing is always an issue. And with somebody like The Rock, as busy as he is, he had a window in early 2024. But when the fans were behind Cody, they changed plans up, apparently. They pivoted, as they say, and went in a different direction. I think he would love to do the match with The Rock, but the problem now is that we've moved on from it. Remember, Roman Reigns was still the dominant world champion, head of the table, tribal chief. He was on top. And we were wondering, who would stop him? And then maybe The Rock would come in and argue that he's actually the tribal chief. Now, it doesn't have that impact because Roman is a babyface. He's in a different place. Although Rock is the final boss, would be quite the fun match with a babyface Roman Reigns. I think he would do it if the timing was right and the angle was right and the circumstances were right. Will that happen? Never say never. I would not rule it out happening at some point down the line. But the older he gets, I feel like the less likely it is. All right, we got one here from Dwayne Atkinson. Thank you, Dwayne, for the super chat. I appreciate it. Dwayne says, do you think we're getting an all Grande Americano faction coming? We might, with all these other guys getting involved. It certainly seems that way, like they're all going to form some kind of a group together. And I'm all for that. It changes things up, gives those guys something to do. I presume it's Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate in the masks. Maybe they're going to become friends with him to try and unmask him. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities with this storyline. If they're creative, they could make a lot of interesting scenarios out of this. But yeah, I could see that. I could see it being some sort of a setup. And knowing WWE, I could see them just one day dropping it and we never get any resolution to it whatsoever. All right, let's move on here. Got one here from Gino. We got an email here from Gino. Paul Heyman discussed Jacob Fatu, Braun Breaker, and Rhea Ripley as future main eventers of WrestleMania. What 3 NXT stars do you think will main event WrestleMania in the future? That's a great question, Gino. Obafemi is definitely my top pick of everybody that's in NXT right now. Sol Ruka is on my list. I think she will be in a main event of WrestleMania. I think she's going to be one of the top stars in the company once she gets on the main roster. I think she's already on her way, and she just has the it factor. So her and Obafemi right now are my main two. As far as a third person goes, that's a little bit more difficult because they called up the ones I would have predicted 6 months ago, like Stephanie Vaquer and Julia. I definitely saw those two being headliners. And, for the men, I don't know about Ricky Starks or Ricky Saints. I don't know about Ethan Page. I mean, both of them will probably be solid mid-carders in WWE. But yeah, beyond Oma Femi, I'm not really sure who else I would go with. Shout out to Psycho Jet Black, who sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. Says, what were the funniest, wildest moments on the No DQ reviews? Well, there was a time that Virtue pissed off somebody and that person actually quit the stream. And all the times TJS was on and we had to make him giggle, that was always a good time. Anytime we got Virtue's rage was a wild moment for me. I was always entertained when Virtue would snap, and him and I went at it a few times on the No DQ review, and it's always entertaining. Virtue knows how to turn up the heat, and yeah, there's a lot of moments I really liked. Oh, and yes, the times that people sent in $100 super chat to get him booted, those were classic No DQ review moments as well. So thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate it. Now, Dwayne sent in an interesting email question. Dwayne says, if giving the right push, could Karrion Kross be bigger than Steve Austin since his popularity has grown organically? Come on now. He ain't going to be Steve Austin. Look, I like Karrion Kross. I think he's got a great look, and he seems like a nice guy in real life, but he ain't going to be Steve Austin. It just ain't happening. And I'm feeling pretty confident in saying that, and I'm not too worried about saying this and having it bite me in the ass. Now, could he be an LA Knight type guy that is an upper card wrestler and can be featured on main events? Yes, I do. I think that he's not the best wrestler in the world, but if they actually push him and let him cut promos on TV, not just the backstage segments with Sami Zayn saying, say it, Sammy, tell them the truth. Actually let him go out there and cut the promos that he's been doing on social media. I think he could be an LA Knight type of guy that could be an upper mid-carder, maybe winning US titles or IC titles and occasionally being in a world title match. I think he can be a top tier guy. I don't think he's going to be a Steve Austin or anything. He's not going to be a guy that's going to change the business in that regard. But I do think he has potential to be an upper guy if they actually give him the opportunity. And I don't know if they're going to do that or not. So we'll see. Thank you for that. And then we got one more here from Jeremy. Shout out to Jeremy. Jeremy says, hey, Aaron, do you think Samoa Joe should have faced off against Jeff Jarrett for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship instead of Sting at Bound for Glory? That's an interesting question, and I think that Samoa Joe should have been in a higher position than he was. Now, Kurt Angle came in around that time, and they did Angle versus Joe. Angle won, of course, and I think they dropped the ball on Samoa Joe a little bit. The thing is, though, they had just gotten on Spike TV, and Sting still had some drawing power at that time. The thing is, I don't think it was the wrong move at the time because they were new on Spike. I think they had only been on for about a year, and Sting was a guy with legit star power. So Sting winning the title, I think, was a right call. but they should have been building up Joe more than they did. Angle was obviously going to win the first match because he just came in, but I think a year later they should have had Joe built up to the point where he could have become the man in the company, and they kind of dragged their feet with it. Never really fully invested in Joe. There would be times where they would push him, but then they would do really stupid angles with him, like the being captured by ninjas thing in the backstage area. They just did some really dumb stuff with him, and it hurt his chance to be a top guy. I think Samoa Joe could have been a guy that carried the company, and they didn't really fully commit to him. Really, the bigger mistake that they made in that period was having Abyss win it, like in that match a month later against Sting. That was dumb. They shouldn't have done that. What they should have done was had Sting win and then build up Joe for a year and then have Joe beat Sting. That would have been what I would have done. Anyway, guys, on that note, we are going to wrap up this one, unless any final super chats come in. I do have some more email questions, so I apologize to Caleb. And Caleb, I don't even think you actually sent me I didn't get a question. I see something you said. John Cena said he wants to face Dominic. That's not a question. That's just a statement. So I don't know if you had meant to send something else. I don't see it in my emails, but I do have some other questions from people. So I'm going to save them for a future episode of No DQ&A video. I'm going to try to get another one up later this month, maybe next weekend or in 2 weeks, but stay tuned. And if you want to send me questions for the next episode, NoDQ@gmail.com. Send in questions, and I still have some saved for next time. I got some from Jeremy, Gino, Calvin Bowman, Marshall. Thank you guys for your questions. I very much appreciate it. And that's it for this edition of No DQ&A video. Much love to everybody out there. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Spread the word about the NoDQ.com YouTube channel. And we got one more. Psycho Jet Black says, who's turning babyface, Dominic or Liv Morgan? I thought it was going to be Dominic, but at this point, I think it's Liv Morgan that will turn at least first. I think both of them will turn eventually. But when Liv comes back, I think she's going to be a babyface. The fans are going to be behind her, and there's going to be shenanigans with Roxanne Perez. So, yeah, I say it'll be Liv Morgan that turns face first, but eventually Dominic will get there. I think they're realizing he still has some mileage as a heel, and they're going to drag it out a little bit longer. But when Liv comes back, I see her being a babyface. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. And on that note, I'm signing off here. Thank you all so much for your viewership and support. Say yes to NoDQ.com, and I will see you all next time.